Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, the reunion. Let's continue watching.
Seen other sides. I mean, look, I don't have any ill will against him either, but obviously watching it back and seeing, some of the lies he said was a little hard for me to watch. Definitely, made my stomach drop a bit because I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good watching someone lie about you to another person.
What were some of those lies that you're alluding to?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a bit since I've watched all the footage, obviously, but I'm trying to remember what she's going to identify it here.
Well, he definitely said that I was his number one. I heard that. I thought I'm his number one this whole time. And I felt like you said it multiple days.
Okay, I mean, to assume that it's a lie, I think is a stretch. I mean, Molly would know him a lot better than I would, but the way it looked in the edit anyway, we can never tell because we're trying to guess what's in someone's mind. But the way it looked was the way it frequently looks, which is the way that he described it to Lauren, which is that Molly was his number one, and apparently he said so. I'm trying to remember if that was in the edit. It certainly was being communicated, or it was the story, right? It was what was being depicted. And then Lauren, he at some point says, well, I never had you super high on my list, but now, and so at some point, maybe mid-week, mid-10 days, he was thinking that Lauren might be who he wants to be with, So to say that it's lies, now, maybe Molly will help us understand that, like, she was told that she was number one, and then she learns that he said, in the same day. But even then, sometimes, I think that can happen, right? Now, I want to be clear that for Molly to be hurt or to be concerned or to wonder about Dave's integrity, as he would put it, or about his self-awareness or his over-pleasing behaviors, certainly, right? But to just assume that they're, I don't know, let's listen.
Days, it felt like you were constantly reassuring me that I was your number one, and I just was very convinced.
And you had a lot to say to Dave the night of the big group party.
I did.
Yeah, so again, that's different than him lying. Maybe lying by omission. It's possible that it was very fast for him. Yeah, I don't know. I think that it would be hard to navigate. It's always hard for people to navigate that. But to just label them as lies is, I think, a common theme of this reunion and other reunions, to just, to observe a behavior and to assume the worst.
Hey.
No, I will say, like, I think, I think you said what you had to say to Lauren, and it's big of you now to, agree that guy sucked. I just feel like you could have done more to have your friends and family meet her off camera if necessary. And I just feel like if you were really begging them.
Yeah, this was one of Molly's communications to Dave at the all-cast party that I completely understand. I think that what was going on with Dave, in all likelihood, is way more personality-based rather than just like a choice that he was making. Even if he had done that he had set up a meet and greet with his family and his friend, mainly his sister, would that have changed much? I don't think so. I think Dave was having some issues. I also, one of the main hypotheses that I imagine being true, based on a number of things that he said, is that whether he was conscious of it or not, he did not go on the show thinking that he would actually get married to someone. I think for him, this was such a stretch away from his typical dependence and underfunctioning and world that he's in, enmeshment perhaps, that it was such an overextension that it was intolerable to go further than what he had gone. In fact, it probably was intolerable how far he went, as evidenced by what I interpreted was deep distress in the pods as he was contemplating getting engaged to Lauren, and the tears and his worries about his sister and his friends and everybody. And what he perceived to be a hammer that would come down on him as soon as he left. And then we saw him play that out, right? So I think for him, again, it's hard to know if it was conscious or not. If it was conscious, then that's immoral behavior to lie to people, to lie by omission in the pods and act like you're there to get married and especially get engaged when you have no intention to follow through. But it's also possible that it was an unconscious issue, that he knew he was trying to push himself, but he unconsciously knew he couldn't go further. Or he just didn't know how he would feel once he crossed that bridge because he'd never done anything even close to this, right? You know, you could see him saying, even being honest to his sister, yeah, I don't think I'm going to get married to anyone. Don't worry about that. But in the back of his mind, he's hoping, and he is willing to give it a shot. And you don't know until you try it, right? Because it is such a specific situation. I think a lot of people have had that experience. And it's not this supreme indictment on their integrity that they went into the pods, hoping but not really expecting. And this notion that if people did have those kinds of thoughts, and Dave would accuse Lauren of this, that somehow if there's any kind of ambivalence, like you're not 1,000,000,000% ready to get married and all of your ducks are in a row and all of your relationships are tidy and all of your thoughts are in alignment with that, that somehow, if you're not in this black and white thing, then you're obviously not ready and you're a deceptive gaslighter.
Fine.
You wait, what? Dated men all year or hated men all year?
Hated.
Hated men all year.
Yeah.
So still no committed
Working
relationship.
through that, yeah.
Any girlfriends?
No, but that's not, something that I would say no to maybe. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, it is time for the number 3 most unforgettable moment in the history of Love is Blind.
Okay. I was not happy with the last one. I thought about it later and wondered if I was being too harsh. I stand by what I was saying, but I think it was pretty silly that number 4 was Garrett dressing up in an outfit that I guess was unexpected to people. I mean, everyone, right now we see Daniel in a tux. Did we ever see him in tux before that? Well, aside from the wedding, no. Everyone's dressed as something that is interesting. So the fact that Garrett did, I think really might represent people's assumption or stereotypes about people, because Garrett came across like a bit of what people would call an introvert, but isn't necessarily an introvert, someone that isn't really into fashion, someone that's a nerd, an intellectual or kind of a math geek or something. And, I think that people having a hard time accepting that he would possibly dress in what I think some people would say a fashionable way is somehow like against character, is more representative of people's stereotype, but which is fine. You can be like, oh, I didn't see him that way. That's okay. But somehow making that of 8 seasons, the 4th most memorable, what? If you would have asked me, anything of note about Garrett at the reunion, I would have said, I don't remember anything that he did, which isn't unusual because he and is it another Taylor? Yeah, Garrett and Taylor. There's a lot of Taylors, right? Isn't there a lot of Taylors? I feel like there's at least 2 Taylors, right? There's Stevens and Sarah's and Monica's and Lauren's, Brittany's. Anyway, so let's see what was number 5 again? What was number 5? It was Chelsea saying that she looks like Megan Fox. So I'll remind y'all what my list of top 5. Number 1 would be in season 1, drunk Jessica hitting on Barnett in front of Mark and Amber at the all cast party. Season 3, Andrew applying eye drops. That better be in this list. Season 4, Micah and Irina laughing at Amber as she is crying in the corner. I have no doubt that we will not see that because, which makes sense because it's not very light. Season 6, Matthew talking to himself, saying that I have America wrapped around my finger or something like that. They won't show that either, I'm quite sure. And then season 7, Leo talking about his goddamn Rolex watch, which I could see them doing because I think Leo has a sense of humor about himself. So let's see what they do.
You left at 10:45 and we're out till 5.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that was on. So I spent time listing out everything, and this was on my broad list, but it wasn't on my personal short list, and it certainly, I didn't think they would, because one, well, they're laughing, the audience is laughing, with the Chelsea moment, and I know that Chelsea, because she posted on Instagram making fun of herself, and I think giving some context to the Megan Fox thing, and she agreed that it was cringy. And then the Garrett thing, it's like, that's pretty light. You're not making fun of anyone who isn't already making fun of themselves, and you're not potentially hurting anyone's feelings. This is dark. This isn't why are people laughing? This is a moment in which Laura, she was up all night waiting for him to come home, and she's looking at the share my location, and sees that he's at the bar, and then he is in a parking lot for many hours, and then he drives Sarah home and is parked there for a while. And then he comes home and he's like, if he came home and said, yeah, I'm sorry, I think we need to break up, or, I don't really want to get into it, but you're right, I should have come. Like, some kind of contrition, something, but he's just like, what's the big deal? God, you're such a bitch. Like, he was that way. And this is a dark moment. And also the allegations, the, potentially very credible allegations that I reviewed about Jeremy having been an extremely abusive individual. They're allegations, but the report from the individual on TikTok that before this show, she was involved with him and he was abusive and controlling in the classic way. And it escalated to the point where he pulled out a gun and pointed it at her face during a fight and was telling her to listen to him or not leave or something like that. And she was so terrified, of course, and she ran barefoot out of the apartment into the bushes to hide from him, called the police. The police showed up, and according to her, they took all of his weapons because he apparently had multiple guns hidden around the apartment. It's all allegations, but that's dark. This is dark shit, and people are laughing. Why would you laugh? This isn't, even if you didn't know about all that extra stuff, this was not a comedic moment.
You left at 10:45 and we're out till 5 something in the fucking morning. The bar's
How is this funny? I guess people laugh when they're uncomfortable. I do sometimes when I'm reacting. It didn't seem like that kind of laughter. Maybe it's a laughter of recognition, a laughter of, yeah, I remember when Jeremy really got his just dessert. I could get behind that, but I don't know. So as a side note, one of the things that I work on with my trainees, my supervisees, is this very thing. There's a bell curve of reactivity that people will have when they come into my program. Some of them will be fairly subdued in their reactivity, and sometimes for those people, they have to amp up their facial expression and their authenticity, their spontaneous reactivity to things that are happening in the therapy office when clients say things. And I actually was kind of like this, that when I would watch videotapes of myself, I was astonished at how blank-faced I was. And, sometimes that's a good way to listen, a way for people to feel safe and heard without you, like, constantly having a reaction to something. And so it was that. But also, I thought I was exhibiting empathy and care, and I wasn't. So I had to emphasize that. And it's something that goes back to when I was a child. I think it has partially to do with the fact that I entered the world in the very, very deep shadow of my older brother and sister, who were, 6, 7 years older than me, and were obviously more interesting and better and charismatic and extroverted and had friends. And, throughout my childhood, they were just always, 6, 7 years, and they were just good at everything. Everyone loved them. They were good at school. They were good in sports. Everyone loved them at church. They had tons of friends. And so I was just always, I wasn't jealous, but I mean, kind of sounds like I was, but it was more of, well, how can I and it wasn't a conscious choice. And part of it was actually a relief, because I didn't have to do anything. If we were around extended family, aunts and uncles and that kind of thing, they took the lead and I could just sit there, and that was nice. I mean, they even did chores that I didn't have to do, because I was just kind of like, they're just good at everything. And so I can just play with my Legos or play with my friends. Anyway, climb trees. So it had something to do with that. And when I was a young kid, there are these moments that are told in my family, little funny anecdotes of my mom trying to, she's taking a picture of me, early 70s, and she's like, okay, smile, Kirk. And I'm dead faced. And she's like, Kirk, smile, smile. And I'm dead faced. And my mom takes the picture or something. And then she says, why didn't you smile? And I said, I was smiling on the inside. And so along those lines, I would have maternal instincts or nurturing, empathetic, caring instincts and feelings as I'm listening to a client, but my face and body is just like completely dead. And I had to learn how to access that and not as a purposeful act, right? Because that's going to interfere with listening and attuning. I have to learn how to just be that spontaneously expressive. And you would think that would be hard to do, but it's not impossible. So it's just a matter of practicing and mindfulness and watching a lot of videotapes while you cringe at yourself as a therapist. And so with my trainees, there can be people that are way overreactive with their face and very expressive. And some of these individuals are on the histrionic spectrum, not pathologically, but they have a similar early childhood experience that actually led to them doing that. And so when a client will say something, they will react very strongly in a very spontaneous way. And depending on what you're being spontaneous about, it can be helpful, neutral, or harmful to a client. Like if a client were to disclose that they had been abused as a child, and you were just like, whoa, what? Because inside that's how it feels. Well, that can really shut things down. Now, sometimes that kind of reactivity can help, depending on the scenario. There's no prescription for good therapy. It's a matter of instinct and wisdom and experience. But you get my point, right? So for some of my trainees, I would watch them as a therapist, either in person or these videotapes, and I would say that they have to learn how to not just instantly react, which can be hard, but it's a thing. So that's it. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't know what to say here, so I'll say that, and that's what I said. But this is Jeremy getting his just dessert. People are laughing about it. Yeah, okay. Now, I will say that of the people on the show over the seasons that deserve to be mocked or ridiculed or have a moment of them getting their just dessert, I would say Jeremy is definitely one of those individuals, right? Like, I don't think there's anyone this season that would deserve to be highlighted in a moment like this. I don't think Dave or Ben or any of them, right? So or Alex, right? But Jeremy, during this scene and then later at the all-cast party at the lake, he was extremely, he's like, I don't understand. Everyone's, like, I'm the bad guy. Like, what's going on? And it's like, well, you, at the very least, you cheated by hanging out with a pod connection, and while you're engaged and living with Laura, if you got together with her, then that's worse. But even if you didn't, it's still cheating. It's still wrong. It's still hurtful. It's still essentially infidelity. And you're acting like you didn't do anything wrong?
Close it too. Where were you?
In the parking lot.
You weren't at the parking lot of Lost and Found. Don't share your fucking location if
That's
you don't want me
bullshit.
to check it at 5 a.m.
That's bullshit.
Great.
I parked, there's Lost and Found, then there's an alley that cuts back there.
You weren't even in South End. You were north of Uptown, which is where Sarah Ann lives.
Yeah. It's just so, it's so, I want to say stupid. I don't know what other word I would say to it, but that you would share your location, and then as she is reviewing what she knew from sharing location, and you're just going to nitpick and lie about it. Now, he would lie. He said that he just dropped her off at her place, and then later either Sarah or Jeremy, or no. He said he never went to Sarah's place, but then later he would admit that he did drop her off at his. So at the very least, he is straight up lying, and would confirm that later, which indicates there's a possibility he's lying through and through. But even if it's not lying, even if everything he's saying is truthful right here, which it's not, it's still a problem. It's still hurtful. He's engaged to Laura, and he's hanging out alone, solo, with a pod connection in his car. He would claim they're just talking. Okay, that's okay, but call Laura, ask if it's okay, or have a different day of conversation, not then, right? Not while you're both intoxicated, not alone in the middle of the night in your car. It's just too threatening. It's too hurtful. Anyone in his position would know that would be a concern, at the very least, a worry of something having happened. It's not like some inherent sin or something, but the way he acts is just like, oh. Now I'm reminded of the context heading into this is that Laura was one of the most disliked people. There were, of this season, you had Matthew and you had Jimmy and others, and everyone universally hated Matthew. There was also Trevor. Everyone hated Trevor, like the survey that I sent out to people. And Laura was, I think, basically in that category. And I think the reason why, if I remember right, is because she would criticize him for things that didn't seem criticizable. Like, he was really into Hawaiian shirts, if I remember right. And she would be fairly pointed and hostile in an unfair way. Then there were other things along those lines. Oh, and I'm also remember, I have to add that to the list, when they were at the getaway party, and Laura, okay, so I added it, that Laura told Jeremy to bean dip AD. Remember that? And Laura was claiming that it didn't happen in the moment, but I reviewed that scene a second time, and there was a lot of indication and corroboration that Laura had told Jeremy to do that. I mean, Jeremy claimed that, and also it kind of fit with the way AD was generally being treated, the microaggressions. But also, what's her name from that season confirmed it in the moment, but she was being kind of quiet about it. What was her name? It was Brittany. Remember Brittany and Kenneth? Brittany, while they were all kind of debating that, Laura's like, I didn't say that. And Brittany said, yeah, you actually did. And Brittany didn't have any skin in the game. She wasn't on Jeremy's side or anyone's side. In fact, if anything, she was probably on Laura's side. And she's like, well, you did say that to him. I was there. and so that happened. That would have been a better moment to, but no, I was like, that would have been a better moment than this. But yeah. Maybe this is, because I suspect, because they're claiming that they sent out a survey to all the fans as to what are the most memorable moments. And according to that survey, they're presenting those 5 items that won. I am quite positive that the 5 that actually won the survey, they are not going to show, because the ones that would win, I'm just going to take a guess and say that Garrett wearing a fancy jacket, I guess, I'm going to take a guess and say that wasn't in the top 5. I don't know. I'm not everyone. I don't know how they're going to what they're going to say. But you can absolutely see the producers not even really looking at the survey, maybe looking at it as a way to brainstorm what, that maybe they looked at the top 50 items. And then they said, okay, well, which ones do we want to highlight? And I suspect that they did the Chelsea thing because it was kind of an iconic moment about the Megan Fox. And then the Garrett thing, I am quite sure, I don't know, but I would put a lot of money that the producers decided to highlight that one because it's another relationship that is working out. And that is, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with the show trying to highlight that this show is a legit experiment, as they call it. It's not really an experiment. It's an exercise of dating. It's just another way of dating, essentially, another way of trying to find your person. Like, you wouldn't say Tinder is an experiment, anyway. So, I mean, maybe the first time they did it, it was an experiment. But once you did it once, then you say, oh, well, this does, apparently, we did the experiment and we found that it can work. And so we are now moving on to repeating the procedure, the method. Anyway, so, I wouldn't be surprised if they highlighted Garrett's nice jacket at the reunion as a way of highlighting that, there can't, because there was only one couple. And I think I don't know how many people are super behind Taylor and Daniel. I'm sure some people are. And I eventually am completely behind them. But because I'm sort of rewriting all that history with the two of them of that they have been and are deeply in love, right? It just didn't look that way. And, I said at the time, how would I know what's in their heart? But there were a lot of indications, particularly early on, that, Taylor was willing to see it through, but she wasn't that into him. He was very much into her. But anyway, so they want to highlight that. And what I think they might be doing here, if I'm just going to speculate, is that they're trying to remind people at the reunion that this show can have drama. There can be really juicy moments because season 8 didn't have anything like this, right? In terms of what was in the edit, there wasn't anything that you could point to that would be this salacious. So that's just my guess.
When I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning, I was like, I would fucking bet my bottom dollar that you were with Sarah Ann.
And I think another mildly upsetting thing about this for me is that Laura comes across like she's strong, like she doesn't have vulnerability, like she wasn't deeply, deeply hurt in this moment, humiliated. And I understand that when people have that persona, when they have that presentation, there's a high likelihood that they actually, of course, have all the regular human emotions and experiences and reactions, and we're never allowed to express it. So this is just another moment where they are denying those feelings even to themselves. And for us to not really imagine that she would be hurt, to not have that compassion and nurturing impulse with her at this moment, is potentially just piling on the neglect of Lauren, giving her the message that she needs to continue to deny those emotions. I can't know that, but it would be really unusual if Laura, during this moment, didn't have all the normal human emotions, even though she doesn't tend to really show it.
I don't have anything else to say.
I could clap for that one.
I will say the applause culture, like when the cast came out, everyone's applauding, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. There's just something weird about it. It's fine, but I would prefer that there isn't an audience on it. But the audience, I will say, and clearly the producers of the show did something different, because there were some seasons where the audience was like, ew, and all that kind of bullshit, the kind of Jerry Springer shit. And I was thinking either that particular group of people are just a bunch of idiots, or much more likely the producers amped them up and instructed them, or planted people in the audience to do that, and then people followed suit. That happens. And on some shows, that's fine. I don't know about Jerry Springer, but if it's a sitcom or something, you're trying to, hey, if you're laughing, really try to laugh, like Seinfeld or something. But in situations like this, it just felt so cheap. And I will say that has stopped, which I'm really, really happy about now that I'm thinking about it. But at the same time, I don't know. I just don't, anything that the audience does as a reaction, I'm either distracted by. Now, another thing that I want to note that they seemingly have discarded is that they, at least to this point, have not involved any past cast members. Remember that there was at least 2 of the reunions. Half of the reunion would be them asking people like Micah, what do you think about this? Or how is your life going? And it's like, let's get back to the topic at hand. All right, well, let's adjourn there for now. Tune in next time when I continue watching. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.